The Buddha let go of this life. Strive to eliminate negative attitudes that bring suffering and increase positive attitudes that bring happiness. The motivation. Have the motivation, the aspiration, that by listening to every word in this commentary, you will be able to recognize the entire path to enlightenment, especially bodhicitta. Pray that this may happen immediately so that you can bring this about for all sentient beings. Pray that each word in this commentary will instantly subdue the minds of all sentient beings. Pray that the entire path to enlightenment, especially bodhicitta, will be generated in the minds of all sentient beings. Listening to this commentary benefits your own mind, and through your listening, you will later be able to benefit others. When you explain this commentary to others, every word you speak will be imbued with greater power because you have already established the motivation to bring maximum benefit to sentient beings. If right now you set such a motivation while listening to this teaching, then later your own teachings will be able to subdue the minds of others very quickly and cause them to generate the path. This will happen due to the power of the mind. When listening to the teachings, it is very beneficial to think that this is how all the Buddhas are guiding you. Keeping your mind focused in that way helps you feel an even closer connection to the Buddhas. Think that the Buddhas are teaching you, guiding you to achieve happiness in your future lives, leading you to liberation and enlightenment. Feel this in your heart. By meditating in this way, you will receive the blessings of all the Buddhas. Think. No matter how many lifetimes it takes, regardless of how difficult it may be, I must attain the transcendental state of wisdom, from now on referred to as Buddha nature, free from all obstacles, complete in all realizations, for the benefit of all sentient beings who have been my mother throughout space. Therefore, I am now firmly setting the correct attitude to listen to this sacred Dharma, following exactly the traditional practices of the lineage lamas. During the short time we have here at this most sacred and precious Bodh Gaya, the place of greatest blessing, where 1,000 Buddhas will descend, we should take this opportunity to accumulate immeasurable merit if possible. Therefore, listen wholeheartedly to this commentary. Seize the essence of this precious human body. Lodro Gyaltsen begins his commentary, opening the door of Dharma by respectfully paying homage and praising the Guru, the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and the Holy Sangha as follows. May the teachings of the Buddha, source of all benefit and happiness for all sentient beings, flourish abundantly. I pray that the teachings spread everywhere. I pray that all sentient beings receive boundless blessings. The title of the commentary is repeated. Opening the Door of Dharma, the preliminary stage of training the mind on the gradual path to enlightenment, and the commentary continues. I prostrate at the stainless lotus feet of the spiritual teacher who is one with all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, and I take refuge in the Guru. By respectfully bowing to the lotus feet of the Guru, by relying on the Guru, I receive every fulfillment. With respect and devotion, I pay homage to the Dharma Protector Guru. Out of compassion for all who genuinely wish to practice the Dharma from the depths of their hearts, I will now speak about how to engage in the sacred Dharma practice. To bring delight to the wise, I will present lessons gathered from the teachings of the Buddha, from the commentaries of the Noble Masters, as well as from the Guru's instructions. Listen with reverence and single-pointed attention. The Guru, whom Lodro Gyaltsen prostrates to, is Khedrub Rinpoche, one of Lama Tsongkhapa's main spiritual heirs. It is not only Lodro Gyaltsen who offers praise to Khedrub Rinpoche, but also celestial beings such as Brahma, Indra, and all beings of the 3 realms. From the sacred mouth of the precious Guru, who embodies the essence of the Buddhas of the 3 times these words were proclaimed. Right now, you must extract as much as possible the essence of this precious human life with its 8 freedoms and 10 endowments. To do that, you must examine how your mind differs from the mind of an animal. Observe the mind of an animal. It thinks, I want to be comfortable. I don't want to be cold. I don't want to be hungry. If you can't think of anything beyond that, then you're no different from an animal. Therefore, grasping the essence of the human body is extremely important, and to do so, you must not be attached to this life. The great Bodhisattva Shantideva also says in A Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, it is extremely difficult to gain this perfect human body whose value is determined by freedoms and endowments. So if I fail to decide now to take advantage of it, how can I gain such a body again? Asking how you will ever attain another perfect human rebirth in a future life implies that you won't get such a rebirth unless you make use of the benefits of this present human body. And why do you need to make the most of your current life so that you can have a future human rebirth? It's because you don't want suffering and you want happiness. No one wants suffering and doesn't want happiness. With this current perfect human body, we have the opportunity to create causes for happiness and avoid causes of suffering. Happiness and suffering arise from your own mind, not from external factors. Your mind is the cause of happiness. Your mind is the cause of suffering. In order to find happiness and avoid suffering, you must work on your mind. The place to work is your own mind. You must eradicate the negative mental factors and negative thoughts that cause suffering. You need to identify wrong ways of thinking that cause suffering, as well as correct ways of thinking that lead to happiness. You will do this by relying on a correct teaching such as the Buddha's Dharma. In your own mind, where the problem is, you listen, reflect, and meditate, endeavoring to remove negative attitudes that bring suffering and foster positive attitudes that bring happiness. Distinguishing virtue from non-virtue. At this moment, we have encountered the authentic Dharma of the Buddha, particularly the Mahayana teachings, the Great Vehicle, which point out the path to total liberation and complete enlightenment. We have met a Mahayana guru, and we possess a perfect human body with all the necessary conditions to put the teachings into practice. From today, at this very minute, we have only a certain amount of years, months, days, hours, minutes, seconds left to live. Each and every day, hour, minute, and second is decisive in determining where we will go when this life ends. From now until we escape samsara, there are only two paths to follow after death, either to a suffering rebirth or to a fortunate rebirth in cyclic existence. There is no third way. Each day, hour, minute, and second is the time to decide and to prepare. You can choose every day, hour, and minute from now until death to avoid a rebirth in the lower realms and secure a fortunate rebirth. Thus, every moment we have right now is exceedingly important and precious. As Nagarjuna explains in The Precious Garland, actions motivated by greed, hatred, and ignorance are non-virtuous. From such actions, all beings arise in samsara where they suffer. From virtuous actions, all beings have happy rebirths, lifetime after lifetime. As Nagarjuna clarifies, everything ranging from temporary happiness to ultimate happiness, from daily difficulties and obstacles, hereafter simply problems, to the endless future sufferings of samsara depends on your mind, on your virtuous or non-virtuous actions. Every action involves two motivations, the causal motivation and the motivation at the time of action. The causal motivation is the initial thought that arises in the mind prompting you to act. It is mental karma, the original mental deed. The motivation at the time of action is the thought you have as you engage in the act with body or speech. It is the subsequent mental action. Therefore, karma involves the workings of the mind. Whether you take birth in the happy realms, heavenly beings or humans, or the suffering realms, hell, hungry ghosts, animals, depends on the creations of your mind. Specifically, the motivations that shape your actions, primarily the causal motivation. You cannot be completely sure you won't be reborn into a lower realm unless you have attained a certain level of patience on the path of preparation, i.e., the path of accumulation. Upon reaching that level, you will have complete confidence of not falling into a lower rebirth. Once you reach the path of seeing and abandon attachment, you won't create any new negative karma, i.e., new causes for samsara. If you don't put an end to the obstructions arising from delusions, after death there are only two paths open to you, the lower realms or the higher realms. And it is your karma, your mind's actions, your motivation that decides which of the two you follow. Drumtompa, the foremost spiritual son of Lama Atisha, asked, "What kind of result will actions motivated by the 8 worldly concerns bring?" Lama Atisha answered, "Their result is precisely that, meaning entirely suffering." Wishing to clarify, Drumtompa asked again, "What will be the outcome in future lives?" Lama Atisha replied, "Birth in the hells as a hungry ghost or an animal. This indicates that any activity carried out with the 8 worldly concerns clingingly attached to this life is non-virtuous." In general, the 10 non-virtuous actions listed below are clear examples of negative karma whose fruition leads to rebirth in the lower realms. Killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, idle gossip, covetousness, ill will, and wrong views. Further examples exist, especially regarding fully ordained monks who must avoid an extensive set of misdeeds, such as hitting people, renouncing vows, or doing confession alone. In the Lamrim teachings, Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, Pabanka Dechen Nyingpo notes that hitting someone leads to rebirth in a hot hell, where suffering is unbearable, and renouncing vows leads to rebirth in the Black Line Hell. Even the seemingly minor act of doing confession alone leads to rebirth in the reviving hell. When we engage in purification practices such as Vajrasattva meditation, prostrations, or confessing non-virtuous deeds, it is crucial to recall and understand the definition of non-virtue, i.e., actions done under the influence of the 8 worldly concerns and attachment to this life are non-virtuous. Remembering this broad definition gives us a wider perspective on negative karma that needs purification. Otherwise, we would only repent very limited aspects. And we shouldn't just remember negative deeds from this life alone, but also imagine all those created in countless past rebirths. Even when we think we are practicing Dharma, our motivation might be absent, or it might be too feeble, so the practice is incomplete. We might recite mantras while our mind wanders, weakening the merit we accumulate. Or, at the end of the session, perhaps we don't dedicate the merits, or we do it with pride again, weakening the merit. Or even if we do dedicate the merit for enlightenment, then letting anger or jealousy arise can destroy that merit or obstruct our realizations for many lifetimes. We create very little merit, and the virtues we do create are incomplete. Meanwhile, we create strong negative karma. If death were to happen now, we would certainly be reborn in a lower realm. And once reborn there, we would have no opportunity to practice Dharma for the sake of future lives or for enlightenment. We would be immersed in suffering and would continue accumulating even more negative karma. Then, upon death, we would continue to wander endlessly in samsara. Not only do we get closer to death with each passing minute, but we also draw closer to the scorching or freezing hells. Earlier, I cautioned about approaching death, but in reality, it's even worse. We are approaching the lower realms. 3 levels of happiness. If you understand the Lamrim, the gradual path to enlightenment, you will see the benefits available through this precious human life. The first level of benefit is happiness in future lives, meaning a rebirth in the happy realms of gods or humans. The second level is liberation from samsara, forever freed from the chains of karma and delusions. The third level is achieving the state of no more sorrow, complete enlightenment, free from the 2 types of obstructions. the afflictive obstructions, and the obstructions to omniscience. These three benefits, or three levels of happiness, are what Shantideva refers to in the verse quoted earlier. Shantideva reminds us we must achieve them, now that we have this current perfect human rebirth. To achieve these three benefits, we must follow the gradual paths of three levels of practitioners. 1. The initial capacity is described by Lama Atisha in A Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. He explains that if one's motivation is simply to abandon complete attachment to this present life and attain a fortunate rebirth in the next, then by recognizing the faults of non-virtue, one abandons the 10 non-virtuous actions and practices the 10 virtuous ones. Because this person keeps pure morality, avoiding wrongdoing and doing good with the goal of happiness in future lives, they are called a being of initial capacity. 2. The intermediate capacity arises when one realizes that all of samsara delusions plus karma gives rise to these contaminated aggregates, which perpetuate future samsaric rebirths. Seeing that samsara is nothing but suffering, like being in a burning house, one develops total renunciation. One has no more interest in samsara, even its finest pleasures. Such a person yearns to be free from samsara, free from the chains of karma and delusions. The method to achieve this is practicing the path of the three higher trainings: morality, concentration, and wisdom, the three higher trainings. 3. The great capacity arises when one completely renounces self-cherishing and dedicates oneself to caring for others, aiming for the highest enlightenment for the sake of all beings. The method to achieve that aspiration is the path of the perfections, paramitas, of a bodhisattva: generosity, moral discipline, patience, enthusiastic effort, concentration, and wisdom. On that foundation, such a person also practices the resultant Vajrayana. Cultivation of the path of the great capacity depends on practicing the gradual path of the intermediate capacity. Generally speaking, one needs a total renunciation of samsara and practice the three higher trainings. In turn, practicing the intermediate capacity depends on following the gradual path of the initial capacity. In other words, on a general level, one must abandon clinging to this life and cultivate morality, such as the 10 virtues. The term "in a general way" means that the attitude and practices at the first level serve as a foundation for the second and third levels, and the attitude and practices at the second level form the basis for the third. Opening the Door of Dharma also describes the three types of practitioners as follows. Anyone who practices dharma or worldly activities with the motivation of being reborn in the realm of gods or humans in their next life is called an initial capacity being. All those actions governed by that motivation are merely causes of samsara. Anyone who aspires to be free from samsara and who practices dharma and renounces worldly ways is called an intermediate capacity being. Such virtuous deeds are the causes of liberation from samsara. Anyone who does not aim only for personal liberation but also aspires to free all sentient beings and engages in related activities is called a great capacity being. Those activities are the causes of complete enlightenment. These three types of beings are defined entirely by their mental attitudes. A being of some capacity must be in one of these three categories. We need to examine our minds to see whether we belong to one of them. If not, we must endeavor to enter into one of these three paths. An animal in human form. Panchen Lama Losang Choki Gyaltsen explains in his commentary on Lama Atisha's A Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment that those who live their lives solely focused on happiness in this present life are actually not practitioners of any of the three capacities. They are considered ordinary beings. Animals such as mice or mosquitoes think only about their immediate comfort, and all their activity aims at that alone. Thus, they are ordinary beings, and what they do is nothing out of the ordinary, just seeking comfort in the present life. Since we possess this special human body, a complete human rebirth, we must strive not to be like these ordinary beings, like ignorant animals. Our actions should not be the same as those living beings who lack a precious human body. Whether we achieve this or not depends on our attitude. We must keep a vigilant watch over our minds, regarding the mind as an object of constant observation. We need to become a detective of our own mind. This vigilance will give us the freedom to transform negative motivation into virtuous motivation. In that way, our life will surpass an animal's life, and we will fulfill the purpose of being human. Our lives will be meaningful. Otherwise, it would be like an actor on stage wearing a mask or a costume of a deity. In a religious dance, we would be wearing a human costume, while inwardly we remain an animal. We would be an animal in human form. As the great Shantideva says in A Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, having once obtained this freedom, if I do not train my mind in virtue, what will I do when I am reborn into the lower realms with endless ignorance and suffering? It is like a beautiful dream. Having attained this precious human life endowed with 8 freedoms and 10 endowments, it is like a beggar suddenly finding $1 million in a trash bin. Shantideva emphasizes that if we do not train our minds in virtue, we will be reborn in the lower realms, which in Tibetan is called Engen Song. Gen means evil or negative, referring to non-virtuous karma. Song means go or proceed. The meaning is that due to non-virtuous karma, you will be compelled to proceed. Your consciousness will migrate into the body of an animal, a hungry ghost, or a hell being. If, for example, you take rebirth as a dog, a pig, or a worm, you will be so ignorant that there is no freedom to understand the meaning of virtue and non-virtue. Even if someone whispered into an animal's ear the meaning of virtue and non-virtue for countless eons, that animal would still be unable to comprehend it. This is why Shantideva says, "Once I am reborn in such realms of endless ignorance and suffering, what will I be able to do? At that point, you can do nothing, your chance is lost. Therefore, before rebirth in such a miserable realm occurs, we must be wise and practice the Dharma now. Now that we have this precious human body, we have the freedom to train our minds in virtue, to train in the Dharma. So we should accumulate extensive virtuous actions, especially the core virtue. Earnest effort to train the mind in the gradual path to enlightenment by cultivating the 3 capacities. The main point is to train in the Lamrim, meditation on the Lamrim in his Lamrim teachings. Pabanka Deshin Nyingpo explains that it is very beneficial to meditate directly on the Lamrim, even if it is just reciting the Lamrim prayer that Lama Tsongkhapa composed in the Foundation of All Good Qualities. Direct meditation means reciting the Lamrim prayer attentively, constantly focusing on its meaning, so that this practice becomes a direct meditation on the entire path to enlightenment. This form of meditation is more crucial than even reciting mantras, or indeed more important than personally meeting the Buddha. Why is that? In retreat, for instance, why do we engage in Guru Yoga practice, visualize the inseparability of the Guru with a meditational deity, or recite a large number of mantras? It is to help us realize the Lamrim path. If we have not attained the 3 principal aspects of the path, dispassion, renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness, we cannot accomplish the tantric path. We might gain some experience to a certain level, but we will not fully realize the tantric path. For instance, without realizing emptiness directly, one cannot realize the clear light or the illusory body, nor can one realize the union of the final stage where the completely purified holy body and the completely purified holy mind are united. Likewise, unless one has at least generated a contrived bodhicitta, artificial bodhicitta at the beginning, even practicing inner heat meditation will not become a true cause for enlightenment. Without the actual realization of bodhicitta, one cannot realize the clear light and the illusory body of the completion stage. To achieve the clear light, the cause of the Dharmakaya, and the illusory body, the cause of the Rupakaya, one must gather an inconceivable accumulation of merit. The driving force to gather that vast merit necessary for the clear light and the illusory body is precisely bodhicitta. When we do retreat on meditational deities, we recite mantras so that we can generate the Lamrim realizations within our minds. We do guru yoga so as to receive blessings for developing the Lamrim path. Everything we do is aimed at this purpose. There is no way to attain enlightenment and complete the tantric path if we do not attain the three principal aspects of the path in our mind streams. Even if we recite millions of mantras and physically wear out our malas and our fingers, without practicing the Lamrim, there is no real transformation. Why is that? Why is there no change in our minds? Why do we have no realizations? Because we have overlooked the essential practice, the Lamrim, the graduated path to enlightenment. We risk ignoring the trunk of the tree while grasping at its branches. In the West, there are many competitions: car races, horse races, running, walking, and here, on the pursuit of happiness for future lives, liberation, and enlightenment, we need a sort of race between practicing Dharma and worldly life. Or, at the very least, we should try to make them equal. While our life ticks away hour by hour, day by day, we should practice Dharma in a way that matches the pace of life's passing. As His Holiness, the Dalai Lama often says, if we can't make the entire day into Dharma, at least make half of the day Dharma. And that doesn't mean you do Dharma from morning to noon and then not afterward. 3. Let go of this life. Let go of this life in your mind. Lama Atisha. Lama Atisha, who first composed a Lamrim text entitled A Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, was a great Pandita with vast knowledge and realization. He spread the Dharma extensively and had accomplished the 5 sciences, the 5 areas of knowledge. He showed transcendent wisdom, single-pointed meditation, and was always supported by many meditational deities. He built numerous temples and monasteries in India, Tibet, and Nepal. He lived to be 72 years old, from 982 to 1054, spending 17 of those years in Tibet. Due to Lama Atisha's great kindness in writing A Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, anyone who encounters the Lamrim will not get confused about where to begin practicing the gradual path to enlightenment. Without the Lamrim, even someone who has studied many sutras and treatises would still be unsure how to start practicing. If asked, how do you begin practice? They would be unable to answer, or they might speak of middle-stage practices before mentioning the initial steps. We are truly fortunate. Through A Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, Lama Atisha integrates the entire Sutra and Tantra teachings of the Buddha, both the Hinayana, the Mahayana, and the Vajrayana, into one complete path, a step-by-step approach that anyone can follow to attain enlightenment. From a scriptural standpoint, everything is clearly delineated in that text. Our only problem is not actually practicing it. Lama Atisha had many illustrious disciples, some famous ones in India such as Pandita Bhumasara and King Mahapali, and in Tibet, aside from his chief disciple Dromtonpa, there were the 3 Kadampa Geshes, Ganpawa, Naljor Chakri Chak, and Jangchub Rinchen. He had many other disciples too, such as Jangchub Ad, the nephew of King Yeshi Ad, Rinchen Zangpo, and Lotsawa Nagso. Even Lama Atisha's disciples themselves had vast qualities, as illustrated in their biographies. When Lama Atisha was about to pass away, Geshe Naljor Chakri Chak said to him, "After you pass away, I will devote my entire life to meditation." Lama Atisha replied, "You must abandon whatever is regarded as evil." Lama Atisha did not say, "Yes, that's good. Go meditate." Instead, he replied, "Let go of any evil actions." Naljor Chakri Chak tried again, saying, "Well then, I will sometimes teach Dharma and sometimes meditate." But Lama Atisha repeated the same answer. Naljor Chokri Chok kept proposing different approaches, but Lama Atisha kept giving the same response. Finally, Naljor Chokri Chok asked, "So what should I do?" Lama Atisha replied, "Let go of this life in your mind." Holding Lama Atisha's instruction to heart, Naljor Chokri Chok went to the juniper forest near Redding Monastery, living like a wild animal in the woods, speaking now only of his physical condition. Regarding his, mind, we are not discussing that here. He lived in complete solitude, meeting no one, and eventually passed away there. Dramtonpa. Dramtonpa served as Lama Atisha's translator. He was born north of Lhasa, very close to Tolung, which is also the birthplace of Lama Yeshe. It is a sacred place where Lama Tsongkhapa had visions of Guhyasamaja and Mahakala. In 1987, while on pilgrimage in Tibet, I, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, gave an Avalokiteshvara initiation there. It is also where monks from the lower Tantric college study the root Tantra teachings given by the abbot, learn how to chant prayers, and sit for exams. It seems Dramtonpa was born quite near that location. Dramtompa's birth was foretold by the goddess Tara. He was an emanation of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. Tara predicted he would be a custodian of the Dharma, that his holy mind possessed limitless understanding of the scriptures and realizations, and that he would have visions of countless meditational deities. Before going to central Tibet and becoming Lama Atisha's interpreter, Dramtonpa lived in the Kham region, serving Lama Setsuen. After meeting Lama Atisha, Dramtonpa asked him which of his many previous practices was the best. He told Lama Atisha about all the hardships he had endured serving Lama Setsuen, staying awake nights armed with weapons to guard the animals, working ceaselessly by day. He built fires, served as a stool for Lama Setsuen's wife to sit on while she milked animals. Sometimes he was simultaneously carrying heavy loads on his back, twisting animal hair into rope with his hands, and rubbing butter on dried animal hides with his feet to soften them. For many years, he toiled like this, doing multiple tasks at once. Dramtonpa recounted everything to Lama Atisha. Lama Atisha said, "Of all that you have done, those hardships you endured while serving Lama Setsuen were the real Dharma." Dramtonpa offered his entire life to Lama Atisha for the next 17 years. From the moment he met Lama Atisha, he was constantly at his side. Every night, Dramtonpa offered butter lamps so that Lama Atisha would not be in the dark. The Kadampa lineage began with Dramtonpa. He had many disciples, among whom the three most eminent were Geshe Potoa, Geshe Chengawa, and Geshe Puchungwa, holders of the Dharma with boundless realizations. Dramtonpa established Reading Monastery in 1057 and lived 7 more years, dying at the age of 51. Dramtonpa was not a fully ordained monk, but a lay practitioner observing the 5 precepts. When visualizing the lineage gurus of the Lamrim, you can picture Dramtonpa as a Tibetan nomad wearing a thick blue chuba made of animal hide. He often wore shabby, ragged clothing, sometimes just a sleeveless chuba, wandering into the juniper forests. He would drive a few stakes into the ground and cover them with a piece of woven animal fur like Tibetan nomads do, and sit in that small shelter to meditate. When strolling through the forest, Dramtonpa would sometimes recite the following short excerpt from Nagarjuna's letter to a friend. "Gain and loss, pleasure and pain, praise and blame, fame and disgrace. These 8 worldly concerns are not my mind's preoccupation. All these 8 are the same to me." He would also recite a line from Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. "I am one who seeks liberation. I do not need offerings or reverence." Sometimes he would recite the whole stanza, sometimes just the first line. While reciting, he often shook his head, implying that he had no need or desire for any offerings or veneration. The Kadampa Geshes frequently said, for himself, Dramtonpa had no need to live austerely, but he did so to set an example for his disciples. Dramtampa, who had renounced all worldly pursuits, was once invited to a place called Rong to perform a puja offering for the monks. He called his disciple Pelgi Wangchuk and said, "You go this time! I cannot go! I am sitting here trying to let go of this life." One day, a monk was circumambulating the monastery. Dramtampa called to him and said, "Circumambulating is good, but practicing Dharma is better." That monk thought, "Perhaps prostrations are better." Seeing the monk prostrate, Dramtampa again said, "Prostrations are good, but practicing Dharma is better." Afterward, the monk turned to chanting prayers and meditating, and Dramtampa repeated the same words. Finally, the monk asked, "Then what should I do?" Dramtampa repeated 3 times, "Let go of this life in your mind. Let go of this life in your mind. Let go of this life in your mind."